Dr. Derya Unutmaz in Farmington, Connecticut. He's an immunologist at the Jackson Laboratory. Doctor, it's always great to have you on the program. What do you make of these extraordinary numbers that we're seeing coming out of the US? And are we at a point where we need to look more at the number of cases, or is it more important to look at how many people are hospitalized as well as the number of deaths to really give us an indication of how serious the situation is?
Yes, the numbers are staggering. I mean, a million cases a day, probably it's an underestimate because a lot of people are either not getting tested or are doing the test at home. But as you pointed out, I think we are at a stage of the pandemic that I'm not sure how useful it is to report every single positive case, mainly because we have vaccines and we have a really enormous immunity shield, to speak, both from prior COVID as well as mostly from the vaccinations. So a very large percentage of people who are getting infected who are previously vaccinated are having a mild infection. The reason why Omicron has spread so much is that not only because it's super infectious, maybe the most infectious virus we've ever seen, but also it can break through the vaccine. But it can break through just to cause some symptoms, kind of like a cold. If you're vaccinated, your immune system is still able to control it. So I think we should really focus on hospitalizations and trying to prevent this severe disease. That's really should be the goal from now on. And I think this will burn out itself fairly quickly.
And speaking of preventions, what do you think needs to happen? President Joe Biden will be addressing the nation in the coming hours. He doesn't seem to be talking about more restrictions, really, which is quite different to what we're seeing in Europe, where so many more countries are now implementing more lockdowns and tougher restrictions as their case numbers go up.
I think the restrictions are not going to be as helpful in this case because you really cannot stop this variant Omicron. But what might be needed is sort of a circuit breaker. If really the hospitalizations increase tremendously, then you really have to put in some sort of a restriction, and it's happening in some of the European countries. But we should also consider that actually the virus is causing its own restrictions because, as you pointed out, thousands of flights have been canceled because people who have COVID are not able to go to work. So you're really pulling millions of people out of the work, and that's kind of causing a strange restriction on its own. So the goal should be really to slow down the spread and make sure that everybody is vaccinated when they're exposed to this virus.
Is that really going to be our only option now as the way out of all of this is to get vaccinated, and not just your first 2 doses if you're getting certain vaccines, but to get the booster? And even now we're seeing in Israel, even here in Turkey, people are getting their 4th booster shots at this point. Are we going to have to come to a point where every 6 months we need to get a shot when we look at some countries where people haven't even been able to get their first jab?
I don't think it will be the case where you'll have to get vaccinated every 6 months. But the booster dose, actually the 3rd dose, was going to happen in any case because we knew that you needed the 3rd dose even for the previous variants, and to increase the memory of the immune system and the quality of the antibodies that you generate. We were very lucky that the 3rd dose is still very effective against the Omicron, despite its ability to escape some of the antibody responses. So I think the 3rd dose is really critical, especially if you have a risk factor, if you're above age 60, you have chronic conditions, your immune system is suppressed, you absolutely need to get the 3rd dose. But I would advise for everybody else. I think after Omicron, we'll probably won't need additional vaccinations unless there's a very new variant that shows up. Of course, this virus continues to surprise us. You can never know. But I suspect that Omicron itself will create an immunity both to this variant as well as the previous variants. So I'm hoping that this will be the last round of vaccinations, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, we're all hoping that for the foreseeable future. Dr. Derya Unutmaz, always great to get your take on this live to us there from Farmington.